Welcome to Lecture 13, where we will discuss animal form and function. The next tissue type we will examine is muscle tissue. Muscle tissue consists of muscle cells that contain specialized contractile proteins called actin and myosin. This is responsible for body movement. There are three main types of muscle tissue that are found in vertebrate bodies: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. Skeletal muscle is considered to be striated, as the cells have distinct stripes or striations. Skeletal muscle consists of bundles of long multinucleated cells called sarcomeres. These form fibers that help with voluntary muscle contractions. Smooth muscle, on the other hand, is considered to be non-striated. This contains spindle-shaped cells that are involved in involuntary movements. Cardiac muscle, on the other hand, is also striated. However, these differ from the cells that are found in skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle cells contain branched fibers that are connected by specialized intercalated discs. These are important in allowing for synchronous contractions, as electrical signals can easily pass between muscle cells. Take a look at the diagram below to note the differences between the three different muscle types. Note the presence of nuclei, the presence or absence of striation, and the overall shape of the cell. Note the presence of the intercalated disc, which differentiates cardiac muscle. Skeletal muscle is typically found connected to bone by tendons and is also found throughout the body. Cardiac muscle is specially located within the walls of the heart. Smooth muscle is found primarily in the walls of the digestive tract, urinary bladder, arteries, as well as other organs. The last type of tissue we will examine is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is responsible for receiving, processing, and transmitting information throughout the body. There are two main cell types involved in nervous tissue: neurons and glial cells. Neurons are the actual nerve cells that receive the information via the dendrites, which are located around the cell body. They are responsible for transmitting nervous impulses along the axon of the neuron to other neurons, muscle cells, or other cells. Glial cells are the supportive cells that exist within the nervous tissue. They help to nourish, insulate, as well as replenish the neurons. Tissues, organs, and systems have to work together in a very coordinated manner in order to ensure proper functioning of the body for the organism. This involves two main systems: the endocrine and nervous system. Within the endocrine, signals called hormones are released into the bloodstream to reach various target tissues. The endocrine system is responsible for coordinating gradual changes, such as growth, reproduction, metabolism, and digestion. The nervous system, on the other hand, is responsible for transmitting electrical signals or nerve impulses to specific areas of the body. The nervous system is involved in coordinating more rapid responses, such as reflexes, movement, as well as balance. Though each one of these systems is adapted for different functions, these systems will work to coordinate together to help to maintain a stable internal environment for the animal. This slide depicts the different signaling pathways in the endocrine and the nervous system. Note that each of them begin with a stimulus on a target cell. In the endocrine system, stimulus on the endocrine cell will lead to the secretion of a hormone or signaling molecule. This will then travel into the bloodstream via the blood vessels to eventually reach a target tissue. This will then be picked up by receptors on the target tissue to cause a desired response. Also note that there are specialized receptors to be able to detect the signal molecule. This can lead to a differential response in different target tissues. The stimulus in the nervous system will then hit a neuron. This will then cause the nerve impulse to travel down the axon. In this instance, we have the nerve impulse being transmitted to another nerve cell or another neuron. This will then lead to the transmission of that nerve impulse down another axon and eventually to the target tissue to cause a desired response. An important point to consider is the fact that animals need to maintain their internal environments to ensure proper cell, tissue, and organ function. This means that animals must maintain their internal environments. There are two main ways that animals can do this. Temperature regulators, such as the river otter, use internal mechanisms within the body to control their internal environment. Temperature conformers, like fish on the other hand, allow the internal changes to reflect the external conditions. This leads us to the concept of homeostasis. Homeostasis refers to the ability for an organism to maintain an internal balance or steady state. This is typically done using two feedback mechanisms, positive and negative feedback. During positive feedback mechanisms, a stimulus is amplified. This is usually involved in pushing a process to completion. For instance, the pressure and contractions during childbirth are an example of a positive feedback loop or mechanism. Negative feedback, on the other hand, occurs when the buildup of a product can act to dampen or shut down the stimulus or pathways. Negative feedback is the most common mechanism involved in maintaining homeostasis. An example of this is the process of sweating in order to cool the body during periods of extraneous exercise. Homeostasis can involve many different variables, such as body pH, temperature, glucose levels, as well as other physical and chemical properties. When the body is trying to maintain homeostasis, there are usually set points as well as ranges to maintain these conditions within a particular range. However, these set points and ranges may change due to life stages, or these points may be cyclic in nature. For instance, circadian rhythms involve intrinsic physiological changes that occur within a daily or 24-hour life cycle. A specific example of this is the fact that melatonin levels typically increase when nightfall approaches. This helps to aid in the regulation of the sleep cycle. Acclimatization is a process where physiological adjustments occur in response to changes in the external environment. An example of this is the fact that kidneys will produce more alkaline urine in order to maintain blood pH if a person or animal is found at high altitudes. This will have the effect of normalizing the respiration rate. Thermal regulation is an important part of maintaining homeostasis. In thermal regulation, body temperature is maintained in order to keep the optimal conditions for tissue and cell functioning. This also reflects enzymatic optimization, cell membrane fluidity, as well as many other biochemical processes. Heat, also known as thermal energy, can be maintained both externally or internally. Endotherms, for instance, use the heat produced by metabolic reactions and are also cooled by internal mechanisms such as sweating. Ectotherms, on the other hand, are typically warmed by external sources in their environment, like the sun. Endotherms, like the penguin seen here, can typically withstand large fluctuations in their external conditions. This is because they maintain homeostasis internally. However, ectotherms, like the turtle, can change their behavior in order to seek out warmer or cool spots to help maintain their body temperature. There are many different mechanisms involved for the exchange of heat between an organism and its environment. These can involve radiation, when heat energy is released by an object that is warmer, evaporation, when heat is dissipated as liquid molecules turn into gas, as in sweating, convection, when heat energy is transferred, either as air or liquid moves across a surface, or as conduction, when heat energy is transferred between molecules or objects that are in contact with each other. There are also many adaptations that organisms will have to aid in the thermal regulation process. This includes having insulation such as hair, feathers, and layers of adipose tissue that can help dissipate or prevent heat loss. Blubber is important in polar and marine animals. Blubber can effectively help to maintain body temperature without the expenditure of much energy. Humans, though they are hairless, still have the remnants of erector pili muscles to constrict hair follicles in response to cold. In truly haired mammals, This acts to trap air to increase the insulation in the skin. Circulatory systems can be highly adapted to regulate blood flow. This is because blood is a major means for heat flow between the exterior and internal environments. Through changing the vasodilation levels and vasoconstriction levels, the widening and narrowing of blood vessels, an organism can either dissipate or conserve body heat efficiently. Countercurrent exchange or countercurrent blood flow is also an important way to conserve heat. Countercurrent exchange in general occurs whenever you have blood or fluids flowing in opposite directions. In this instance, arteries that typically contain warm blood as they are just leaving the body core are located in close proximity to veins that are typically carrying cooler blood from the extremities. By having the warm blood lay in close proximity to the cold blood, this will maximize the heat exchange and also to minimize heat loss within the body. Evaporative heat loss is also an important mechanism to maintain body temperature. This is because as water evaporates, it will absorb heat, which means that it will help to dissipate heat from the surfaces that it is evaporating from, such as the skin and respiratory tract. Specialized sweat glands are present on the skin surface of humans to maximize evaporative cooling when needed, as in periods of strenuous exercise. Panting can also help to lower internal body temperatures in the dogs seen in the image below. Pigeons, for instance, as well as other birds, have pouches of blood vessels on the floor of their mouth that can also help to maximize cooling, especially in arid or dry and hot environments. Animals can also maintain their body temperature through their behavior. Organisms can easily move towards or away from heat sources. Social animals can also work together to retain or dissipate heat. For instance, dragonflies, such as this, can take an obelisk position. This is where they raise up their abdomen in order to maximize the surface area exposed to the sun. This helps them to keep from overheating. Social animals, such as the honeybee, can huddle to retain heat, or they can repeatedly fan their wings to dissipate heat out from the hive, thus maintaining optimal conditions for their larvae to develop. Animals can also go what is termed thermogenesis to vary their rates of heat production in order to match their rates of heat loss. This can be seen in shivering. Shivering can help to increase heat production in animals, as well as insects prior to flight. Brown fat in mammals also has a higher number of mitochondria to rapidly generate heat. Bears and hibernating animals, such as this baby seen here, have higher levels of brown fat in order to help maintain their body temperatures. Adult humans can increase the amount of brown fat in response to long periods of cold stress. Acclimatization occurs when there are cellular physiological changes that occur within the body to help maintain body temperatures. For instance, many animals typically will grow thicker coats during the winter months to help keep them insulated during the cooler temperatures. This thicker coat is then shed during the spring and summer to also help regulate body temperature. Insects, such as this grasshopper, can produce antifreeze compounds to prevent freezing during sub-zero temperatures. This will allow for the insects to survive the winter period and to come out as adults during the spring. An important aspect to understand the regulation of body temperature is to also understand what happens when the body temperature rises, as in a fever. The hypothalamus region of the brain contains a group of nerve cells that are responsible for controlling the overall body temperature of an organism. This will promote heat loss or gain whenever the body temperature falls outside of the desired range. However, when an infection is present, both endotherms and ectotherms can experience elevated body temperatures. Recent research has suggested that this may actually aid in killing the pathogen. It also helps in activating or increasing the immune response. However, if temperatures raise too high, this can be detrimental as proteins and enzymes will begin to break down. The diagram to the right describes what happens when an organism such as a human experiences a fever. Note that the normal body temperature for a human is approximately 36 to 38 degrees centigrade. Once the body temperature increases, this is detected by the hypothalamus. As a response, the hypothalamus will activate cooling mechanisms. This involves the dilation of blood vessels in the skin to dissipate out the heat, as well as an increase in sweating. As a result, the body temperature will typically decrease. If the body temperature decreases too much, then the hypothalamus will activate warming mechanisms such as shivering and constriction of the blood vessels. This will lead to an increase in body temperature. It is typically costly to maintain homeostasis within an organism. Bioenergetics refers to the transfer of chemical energy within an organism. This determines an animal's energy requirements in order to survive. The bioenergetics of an animal is typically correlated to an animal's size, level of activity, as well as their surrounding environment. Keep in mind that most animals are heterotrophs. This means they need to obtain their chemical energy through the consumption of organic molecules. These molecules are thus made by other organisms, as animals cannot produce these chemical compounds themselves. As a result, food is typically consumed and broken down by enzymes in order to release the nutrients for use by body cells. Cells will then use aerobic or anaerobic pathways in order to produce ATP. This ATP can then be used to drive cellular work. This slide depicts the bioenergetics in animals. Organic molecules from the external environment will then be consumed by the animal. This food particles will be digested as well as absorbed. As the material is absorbed, nutrients will enter into the body cells. This will then be used for cellular respiration or to make other organic compounds. During cellular respiration, energy such as ATP will be produced. This will be used to drive the processes of cellular work as well as the biosynthesis of important molecules. The biosynthesis of these molecules can also be used for further nutrients within the organism. Also note an important concept called energy coupling. What typically occurs is processes that release energy, which are shown in green in this diagram, are typically coupled with reactions or processes that require energy, which are shown in orange. Energy coupling is an important mechanism that allows for the maximization of energy within an animal. Also note that many times within these processes, energy will be released in the form of heat. This heat will then be released from the environment. A metabolic rate can be important in understanding the bioenergetics of an animal. The metabolic rate represents the sum of all energy an animal uses within a time period. These are typically measured in joules or calories or kcals. Metabolic rates can be assessed in the lab by quantifying different variables such as the rate of food consumption or waste production, oxygen or consumption or carbon dioxide production, as well as the rate of heat loss. And finally, some animals may be highly adapted to withstand periods of extreme temperatures or periods of extreme stress. In this instance, animals may be able to conserve their energy by entering into a state called torpor. Torpor is usually a state that has a marked decrease in physical activity as well as a marked decrease in metabolic rate. Some animals can enter torpor daily, such as this hummingbird that enters torpor at night in order to conserve energy for the high metabolic demands it experiences during the day. Other animals may hibernate or undergo estivation in order to survive cooler or warmer months, or to withstand periods of limited food supplies. Thus, there are many adaptations that can be present in order to maximize an organism's efficiency within its environment.